What's up? Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Twitch. How's everybody doing this morning, afternoon, evening? What's up, Lee? How are you? I'm doing good.
And we do see a live feed here of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth as he is currently in Florida. He just concluded what appears to be signing a document. I do want to head over and listen in, and if this is concluding, we'll play it back for you from the beginning.
Counter narcotics and cyber breakout discussion.
And that feed did just go away there. Let's do this. I do want to share with you this very brief moment here that we got with War Secretary Pete Hegseth, this concluding just moments ago.
I'm the only one that needed to sign because everyone else already has. So here you have it. It's America's Counter Cartel Conference Joint Security Declaration, affirming our relationships, respecting sovereignty, recognizing the strategic importance of this hemisphere, and declaring our intent to expand multilateral and bilateral cooperation to enhance security in the hemisphere, to cooperate on whole-of-government efforts on border security, countering narco-terrorism and trafficking, securing critical infrastructure, and other areas to be determined, advancing peace through strength, as was so eloquently said by so many speakers here. It means something to address future threats to our mutual interest and join together to combat narco-terrorism and other shared threats in the Western Hemisphere. Signed March 5th, the year of our Lord 2026, in English and Spanish. How about that? Thank you.
We will now have a 10-minute break. Breakout sessions will begin promptly at 11:15. Secretary Hegseth will first host Caribbean nations on the first floor in room 136. Central American and South American nations will begin with counter-narcotics and cyber breakout discussion.
All right, so you did see that feed was not the best there, but we wanted to share it here with you as once again, that did just pop up for us there, and that was War Secretary Pete Hegseth. As once again, he is in Florida, and he spoke at the inaugural America's Counter Cartel Conference at U.S. Southern Command headquarters in Florida there just a bit earlier this morning. And that's what that still image is that you see on the left side of your screen. Those were his comments from a bit earlier today. We'll continue to monitor that feed. As you can see, it did just go to colored bars there. But once we see Secretary Hegseth again, if we do see him again, of course, we're going to bring it to you. In the meantime, let's head back out to this live event that we have been listening into here on Capitol Hill as the Undersecretary of Defense is testifying.
In the National Defense Strategy, the prioritization on homeland defense is incredibly important. It's important not only to the entire country, but specifically to a district like mine, given the importance of missile defense. Can you tell me a little bit about the administration's focus on East Coast Missile Defense Site? In the first Trump administration, you will recall that the president designated Fort Drum as the chosen location for East Coast Missile Defense Site. This committee has passed that language. What is the status of that, and what is the plan for that moving forward?
Ma'am, I'll have to get back to you as quickly as possible with an answer on that, just on the precise status. But obviously, the administration is committed to implementing the president's Golden Dome approach. So I think we see a strong future for missile defense. But I'll get back.
And implementing the NDAA and the language in the NDAA with the selection of Fort Drum as the East Coast Missile Defense Site.
I'm sorry.
And the intention is to implement the language in the NDAA.
I have no reason to think otherwise, but I'll get back to you, ma'am.
Okay. I guess just broadly, as you know, Mr. Colby, I represent the 10th Mountain Division, which I've just referenced. It's the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since 9/11. Currently, a brigade is deployed to the Middle East. Can you share a message to those soldiers and their families whom I represent in my district? These are families I speak with every single day as their member of Congress, and they'd appreciate to hear from you.
Well, I think I can say on behalf of the leadership of the department that they have, our deepest respects and a sense of their honorable duty in a cause that is, very much in the American people's interest, and that we are thinking very carefully and soberly about, how we consider putting them into harm's way, so they can be confident. I can say, Secretary Hegseth is personally leading day by day, hour by hour. Really focused attention, obviously, with the uniformed, seniors, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Cooper, et cetera. So I think they can feel they've got fantastic leadership under President Trump.
Well, we are grateful for their service, and our hearts and prayers go out to the 6 service members in the U.S. military and their families for the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our country. My final question, Mr. Colby, is as we know, the CCP and the Iranian terrorist regime have long been close allies and partners, exchanging oil, munitions, and technology to repress their people. What is your assessment of the CCP posture today, and also what are your biggest concerns over the next 6 months to a year now that there has been the start of Operation Epic Fury?
Well, thank you, ma'am. I think we're watching this very closely. I'd have to be a little elliptical in open hearing, but I think, as I mentioned to Mr. Moulton, I mean, they certainly have been impressed by the prowess of the Joint Force, the ability to operate so effectively together. So I think that's been a salutary message for kind of stability. My understanding is the Chinese, obviously, they're very dependent on energy resources coming out of the Middle East, so that's something they're watching very closely. One thing I think in the administration, from the president on down, the president doesn't use terms like axis of evil and these kinds of things. I think obviously we are, as Mr. Moulton put it, concerned about the potential for simultaneity, but we want to avoid it. So part of that is the military part, but obviously the president's diplomacy is designed to engage with our potential opponents, obviously from a very clear-eyed point of view, from peace through strength point of view, but that's designed to avoid that very outcome. And I would distinguish that from the last administration, where Mr. Sullivan, I think, spoke at the end of the last administration about how our adversaries, quote unquote, were aligned to an unprecedented degree. And if you go back and you look at Henry Kissinger as something, the standard for a successful American foreign policy, you don't want everybody ganging up against you. And I think the president is very clear-eyed. Obviously, he's very realistic, but he's willing to engage in diplomacy. From a realistic frame, and then our job is to provide that peace through strength approach, for instance, in the context of China.
Thank you. Yield back.
Again, ladies, time has expired. Gentleman from California, Mr. Carvajal, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colby, thank you for being here today. And finally coming to this committee. I think many of my colleagues in this room from both sides of the aisle agree that communication coming from the department to Congress has been lacking. Trump has consistently said his administration is the most transparent in history, and I assume that that is something you take to heart. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and if you could not filibuster and answer the questions as simple and straightforward as possible, I would appreciate it. How much does the department spend per boat strike in the Pacific and the Caribbean?
Sir, I don't have that information, so I'll get back to you on it.
How many pounds of fentanyl have been destroyed in these strikes?
My understanding is quite a bit, but I'll have to get back to you with a specific answer.
In total, how much has been spent to date
He
on
said
boat
no
strike
filibuster.
operations?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you with a specific answer.
Southcom and SOCOM did not have funding appropriated for these appropriations. What accounts were used for these operations?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you with an answer. Obviously, I'm not responsible primarily for the budget.
Mr. Kobe, is it safe to assume you were involved in decisions and discussions leading to Operation Epic Fury?
Sir, I've been involved in, most of these kind of policy and strategy-related decisions.
The president recently said he has a very beautiful plan for what comes next in Iran. For the sake of transparency and for us on this committee and the American people, could you please share what Trump's so-called beautiful plan is?
Well, sir, as I said earlier, my work is mostly in the Pentagon, so I, rely on, our secretary and the chairman who are over in the White House. I wouldn't add or say anything to presume to interpret the president's words, but we're paying a lot of attention to making sure, as he has instructed, that we have a good outcome and a sustainable, intelligent one that serves Americans' interests in a lasting way.
Mr. Kobe, we're not getting some answers from you. We're getting a lot of rhetoric and oftentimes no answers to our questions, no information. In the National Defense Strategy, our allies are criticized for, and I quote, investing in domestic programs. To a majority of the world, investing in domestic programs is also known as governing and taking care of your citizens. And I get this criticism was made in the context of allies not investing enough in defense. But even when a country is doing everything right, they seem to be punished by this administration. Take the Baltic nations, NATO's eastern flank, for example. They have consistently led defense spending by GDP in Europe, each topping 3%. And despite this, the administration attempted to zero out programs like the Baltic Security Initiative. What else should a NATO ally be doing, in your opinion, if their commitment to defense spending isn't enough to have this administration support?
Welcome, everybody. Hit that like,
And what
subscribe.
Sir, I find it a little paradoxical that, it sounds like you advocate for more domestic programs. It's the American people who've been paying to indirectly subsidize. And don't take it from me, sir. Minister of Defense Collins from New Zealand has made this exact point. Secretary Bessent has pointed out that
if you could just answer my question, I would appreciate it.
So our allies have invested in their domestic societies. That's not fair. I mean, it seems kind of common sense to me, but it's also not sustainable. And the Europeans and the others, they're not contesting it.
What do they have to do,
sir, they
to invest
and do their part
heavily in defense?
And sir, let me be very clear. We are actually adapting. So, I mean, if you look at my travels last month to Brussels and to Munich, that was the message, and that was the message the Europeans perceived. And I would say a lot of this is a little bit, we're behind the target working with our allies, sir.
Let me ask you a few basic questions. Is Russia's illegal war in Ukraine a threat to the United States?
Sir, we're all supporting the
yes or
end
no?
of the war in Ukraine.
Just yes or no, Mr.
Sir, we
Kobe.
take the Russian military.
Mr. Kobe, how simple is it to answer yes or no?
We're taking the Russian military threat seriously, sir. Yeah.
Is Ukraine a friendly country?
Is it a friendly country? Yes, I think so.
Thank you. I would encourage you to answer our questions and not filibuster with a bunch of BS. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary Colby, I'm probably going to take a little different approach than
rhetoric
some of my
on both
colleagues have
sides
here. But as the subcommittee chair on strategic forces, I have a lot under my umbrella that is the president's priorities, including Golden Dome, advancement in space, nuclear modernization, missile defense, and so pretty much all the things we're talking about here. So what concerns me the most, looking forward, is a conflict with China. I would say people are questioning daily, why now? Why did we go after Iran? And I would say, why not any time in the last 47 years? Because we could have spent the next hour talking about all the death and destruction that they've caused directly as a regime and what they've done through their proxies with the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. And so when we talk about cutting the head off the snake, if that's what we're doing right now, how long would you anticipate the proxies to dry up, because we know all their weapons, money, and training comes from Iran?
Well, sir, we're not going to close the president's decision space, but obviously I think you've heard the president talk about 4 weeks roughly for the military campaign. I think the chairman has talked about 3 to 5 weeks in terms of the designated objectives, hopefully getting into a good place. But obviously that's going to be as long as the president dictates, or as short, that's going to be up to him.
And I would rank China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea as our 4 biggest adversaries in that order. What we're doing right now in Iran, if we were in a conflict with China, would we have the capacity to do both?
Sir, I think we're in very good shape, in large part because of the president's leadership, because this strategy is designed to get after the defense industrial capacity and the readiness and the restoration of the warfighting ethos that will allow us, and the stepping up by our allies and partners rapidly that will allow us to deal with the full range of potential challenges.
And none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know how this is going to turn out, but I think it's looking pretty good. I think that there's a real opportunity for the Iranian people to take their government back. Over 80% want that, and you know, I am optimistic that we are doing significant damage to the regime that we would not be able to do if we were in a conflict with China. And I think China does take notice. And deterring China, let me put it this way, the best way to win a conflict with China and Taiwan is to not let it start. And I think this is a good way to do it. Let me ask this, and I don't know if you can say in open setting. It doesn't seem like Iran has many friends, and the friends that were at least neutral to them they're attacking. Do you see any sign that anybody's running to Iran's rescue?
Sir, if I could just briefly address, I think the way you put it, the best way to deal with the challenge of China is not to fight it from a position of strength where interests are respected, and that's exactly the approach that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have given us. I've actually been quite struck by how little support there is for Iran, and of course they've made that situation worse by taking shots at countries throughout the Gulf, Turkey, etc.
Yeah, and I think Trump is. We were not happy with what he did in Romania by pulling troops without telling us about it. You know, we're on Team America. This committee is probably one of the last bipartisan committees in Congress that I can see, and we're on your side. And I do ask that we get better communication, because we want to help you, and we want to help America, and we want to do this right. And we can't do that without better direction, better clarification, and the fact that we feel like you trust us, because we do have to speak to our allies and their ambassadors and all that. And if what we're telling them is not consistent with what the president's doing, it makes our job much more difficult. China is projected to have over 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, vastly surpassing our capacity. They're also heavily investing in area denial systems and massively in ground test infrastructure compared to what we have in the United States, advancing in hypersonics. And their shipbuilding capacity is probably 230 times what the U.S. is. So how does the national defense strategy hold China at risk and pace in fight with all these advancements?
Well, thank you, sir, and maybe I'll answer those questions together, and I appreciate your trust, sir, and I appreciate also your points about communication. I think, as I said earlier, we've been leaning forward on the policy side over the last 4 or 5 months, so I think we've got a good track record, but we can always do better, and I'd welcome myself and my team both sitting down with you and your staff, others who are interested. We're an open door and would welcome the communication. Obviously, we now have a settled framework, obviously, from reflects the Secretary, but with, on down from the President, alignment there. But I would say on that issue, we're actually thinking about a nuclear strategy. We're not going to do a formal nuclear posture review of the whole, bells and whistles, because I think the first term, President Trump's NPR, a lot of the things set out publicly were superb. But we are going to focus in on a few problems that I can't get into in an open setting, but welcome talking to you and your team about that if that's of interest.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from California.
Once again, that is the Undersecretary of Defense there testifying amid the Iran war. We've also been sharing with you here on Live Now from Fox. If you are just tuning in, we are keeping an eye on Capitol Hill because the House is set to have 2 key votes today. One is going to be on Iran and war powers. The second on DHS funding, as we are still in a partial government shutdown. I also wanted to share this with you. We are going to be bringing this to you uninterrupted, and this is slated for 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, as we're set to hear from War Secretary Pete Hegseth and Admiral Brad Cooper, as they are both set to be speaking here once again at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to bring that to you without commercial interruption. This is going to be an update on Operation Epic Fury. We did hear from Hegseth a bit earlier today as he was in Florida. He is still there, and so that's where we're going to be getting this press conference from. We are stepping away for a commercial break. Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Oh man, a lot to unfold there. A lot of stuff going on. And as far as the government shutdown goes, I feel like they should take all these Congress people's money and have them forego it first if they're anticipating a shutdown. Plus, they don't need their salaries anyway. Most of these politicians have other financial investments outside of their payroll. So I think based on the principle, they should have to forego their money. But that's wild that during a government shutdown that they still keep getting paid. Lake Pontchartrain? Pontchartrain? I don't even know where the hell that is. What the hell? Some of these people's comments are so wild. Yeah, I don't even want to show like what actual Fox's comments are. It's insane. Oh, Boston looks cold.
And welcome back to Live Now from Fox. We are going to continue our coverage here as the Undersecretary of Defense is testifying amid the Iran war. Let's continue to listen in live.
Munitions that we do have, as the president said, in much more plentiful supply. I think we're conscious of the risks. I mean, we know what this is part of the reason for it. The Islamic Republic has conducted terrorism in the past. We're very acutely conscious of that. But I think a goal, this is what, this is not Iraq, I guess, 3.0, right? We are not doing nation building. We're not flowing. Obviously, the president has the option to use a variety of capabilities, but this is not, Jerry Bremer, CPA,
Good morning,
et cetera.
Sue said. I'm doing good. How are you?
My goal is to have your voice uplifted, so I don't want to ask you hard questions because maybe they'll discount your voice. I like the fact that you're in the administration compared to some of the other folks who are in the administration. By the way, the Vice President Vance used to be where you were in terms of not getting into these wars until he's gone in the kind of Lindsey Graham direction. I actually don't understand it. Donald Trump beat Lindsey Graham in 2016, and now Lindsey Graham has become the face of Donald Trump's foreign policy. It's like, what happened? But let me ask you this last question. What about the view that Iran is just going to rebuild these things in 6 months, in 1 year? What is the plan? General Petraeus said, what is the plan after Iraq? What is the plan? Are we going to go bomb them again?
Well, I think that's a great question, sir, and that's the one that we're wanting to make sure. And part of the reason why the industrial capacity is such a part of it, and I certainly am thinking about General Petraeus' famous admonition, because that's a critical part. And this is still, obviously, the conflict has just begun, but we need to, day by day, in a dynamic situation, make sure that we end up, and we don't, and the president has said
Let
that,
me just
we don't
have
get
10
right back
seconds.
into it.
You're a serious person. I hope this doesn't hurt you more than help you, but I've always found you to be engaged with intellectual honesty, and I appreciate some of your writing.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Secretary Colville, you being here today. My feedback, I got some good, maybe some bad, some ugly. On the good side, I appreciate the actions taken against Iran. I served 30 years in the Air Force. I've lost friends to the Iranian proxy groups. A good friend of mine at Khobar Towers, for example. When I was in Iraq, we were targeted every single day by proxy groups from the IRGC. This action should have been done a long time ago to restore deterrence. And I can't think of a better group of folks to target than the Ayatollah and his henchmen, because they have over 1,000 Americans' blood on their hands. I appreciate the action taken against Maduro, who took the most wealthy nation to the poorest nation. and South America. For the life of me, though, I can't figure out why we're propping up his vice president as a dictator follow-on. Here's the ugly. First of all, maybe less ugly, China. Some of the statements that I read in the NDS, it communicates weakness to them, that China could just do an invasion of Taiwan as a fait accompli, and it sort of communicates we don't have the ability maybe to deter that. We'll come back to that. But this is what really steams me. The administration, writ large, starting with the president on down, communicates weakness when it comes to Russia. Why does this administration, and this is rhetorical, I'll get to my first question, but I can't figure out why the president treats Zelensky in Ukraine more harsh than he does Putin, who's the invader, who's bombing cities every night. He treats Putin with velvet gloves, but he gives Zelensky the old boxing glove treatment, and I don't get it. There's like a moral blindness in this administration when it comes to Russia. And you see it in the NDS with one line on Russia, one line. A whole page is on Europe and attacking Europe or criticizing Europe, and one sentence on Russia. It just bothers me. When I read the NDS, and I'm a history guy, and I've read the previous NDSs here, and as a general and colonel, I read the ones going farther back. This reads a lot like 1890s national security strategy. Western Hemisphere, spheres of influence, homeland security, as if we never fought a world war. It's as if we never had the Cold War. It's as if we never had the war on terror where we had allies fighting with us in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I'll get to my first question. In the NDS, it does say there has to be clear accountability. Incentives work will be a critical part of our alliance. We will prioritize cooperation with model allies, those spending what they need to do and doing more against regional threats with critical but limited U.S. support. I can't figure out why the Pentagon said they didn't want to do the Baltic Security Initiative and also talk about withdrawing forces out of the Baltics when they lead the way. They have the highest level of defense spending. So why not be stronger for our Baltic friends?
Well, sir, I've seen your commentary, and one thing I must say I appreciate today is I think you rightly recognize this as part of from the president and the secretary on down. We all are thinking the same way, and so it's a total myth that we're not aligned with the president. I appreciate that your point and your questions, like Congressman Khanna's, they're straightforward. So I'll grapple with them in the same spirit that you offered, and I'm happy to come talk. I know we have different views and different views with many in the administration, but I appreciate the way you framed it, sir, and don't take it for granted. I would say, sir, from what it sounds like, I mean, this document and the National Security Strategy describing the president's approach, and I'll get to your question, sir, is flexible realism, is a practical approach. It sounds, I think it's a bit different than yours. In some ways, maybe yours has been in the ascendancy in the past, and we're trying to make a break, but we're not trying to con you about it. It's pretty straightforward. I recognize, obviously, your distinguished military service. This is more kind of grounded in military reality, almost like a more empirical, kind of dispassionate way, and less in the rhetorical style. Sir, one thing I would really stress on is we see ourselves as in line with the Cold War legacy and more of a break from the post-1989 when I think we got a bit hubristic, as the document says. We don't talk about spheres of influence. That's something that's put on us. And we can get into a discussion about the 1890s. I don't know. It's interesting. On Baltic Security Initiative, let me get back to you we are not trying to punish the Baltic states. The president has been clear that our wealthy allies should be prepared to step up. We're looking at this in a pragmatic way, with generally trying to get Europe moving the same direction. Just as your predecessor, sir, said about China, the goal with Russia is to avoid a war while we're, and to Mr. Turner's point about protecting NATO, but we got to do it in a militarily realistic way, and you know this very well, sir.
All right, so we do have another live feed that is coming in here, and this is taking us out to Iowa as we're listening in to Governor Kim Reynolds speaking on the service members that were killed in Iran. Let's listen in.
As many Iowans are aware, approximately 1,800 Iowa National Guard soldiers and airmen with the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division, were also deployed to the Middle East last year in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. About half have now returned to the United States, and tragically, as we know, 2 of our soldiers were also lost during this deployment. Staff Sergeants Nate Howard and Edgar Torres Tovar were killed in an enemy attack on December 13th in Syria. I had the opportunity to visit our soldiers in the Middle East in January, and I wanted the opportunity, first of all, to get in theater and just to show our support, the state support, and to truly express to them how grateful our state is for their service and their sacrifice. But I can tell you without hesitation that I gained so much more from them. I had the opportunity to see firsthand how critical they are to the mission in the Middle East. And almost at every single stop, they were leading those missions. And I heard over and over how personally committed that they are to it. They believe in the work that they're doing. They stepped forward and they chose to serve, even in challenging and dangerous situations. And it is our responsibility to stand strong in support of each and every one of them. Losing 4 soldiers from Iowa in the course of 3 months is a sobering reminder that our freedom is not free. It demands sacrifice and the kind of service that these heroes and their families have made on behalf of all of us. And it's why our support for the men and women who wear our nation's uniform is so important. We owe them not only our gratitude, but our unwavering commitment to stand with them, to care for them, to care for their families, and to honor their service to our state and to our country every single day. So before I open it up for questions, I want you to know just ahead of time, I'm not stalling, I might not be able to answer some of the questions that you might have on this topic because as I mentioned, this is a federal military component. But my team will be happy to provide everybody with a contact for the U.S. Army Reserve Command Public Affairs Office so that you can reach out directly to them. It's different with the Guard.
He's basically like, this is a pending military active investigation. We're going to send you to our PR person who just deals with PR, and they're going to give you the watered-down version of everything that happened. For those who don't understand that. But also, I want to take a moment of silence. Prayers go out to the family, friends of the lost ones, the Iowa National Guard, serving their country in Iraq. And she said something interesting that resonates with me, is that freedom is not free. People take our freedom for granted because less than 1% of our population has to fight for that freedom, fight for the values that protect that freedom, and for people's freedom outside of our country too. So just going to take a quick moment of silence for them.
Because I'm not gonna talk about numbers. If you want to visit with Congressman, I'll let you do that. What I can tell you that we are aware of the injured soldiers, and I can confirm that they have been safely evacuated to Germany. So all of them are out of theater and are in Germany. And so they're still. I do believe they notified families of the soldiers, but I'm not gonna. I'll let him, or I would, probably let the Department of War confirm the numbers, and I'm sure that that will be happening at some point.
Members of the Iowa National Guard are scheduled to return this weekend. Do you have any message for all military families here in Iowa? Some just found out that their sons and daughters are coming home. Others found out that they're not.
Yeah. Just how grateful I am to each and every one of them. I can't imagine the sacrifice, that they're, and just, to think they're coming home, and then maybe things have changed, delayed. We've had some killed in action. So just how grateful we are for, their son or daughter or family or husband or wife or dad that have stepped up and chose to serve our country. And we forget that less than 1% of Americans serve on our behalf. That is such a small number. And in Iowa, we have a large percentage of that. We always have. We are, strong Americans that believe in this country, that believe in freedom. And we believe that we need to do whatever we can to protect it. And the fact that we have so many families and individuals that have stepped up to serve in that capacity says a lot about who we are as Iowans. And so just know how much we appreciate you. These individuals that have been killed and those that have been wounded and really those that serve every single day are heroes, and we are so grateful to each and every one of them. And as we walk through, I will be a part of the dignified transfer like I was earlier, and so we're waiting to hear when that will be, but we'll be there at every step of the way until we get those Iowans that have been killed or wounded back home. And we'll continue to provide the support that our families need to get them through this really difficult time. Well, I think, anytime they sign up and step up and serve in this capacity, it's not just in good times. They know that potentially they could be placed in theater. So, I don't want this to be about me, but it's it's a horrible thing to have to call these families and just say how sorry I am, how proud we are of their son or daughter or their husband or wife or dad, that the heroes that they are, and the fact that they put their life on the line to protect the freedoms that we, get to experience every single day. And so, nobody enters into war lightly, and so everybody is having those conversations. But, this is, I believe in the mission right now. I think it was the right thing to do. I do. I think, you just look at what Iran has done over the last several years, and so I support what they're doing, and hopefully we're in and out. I believe that is the goal of this administration. They've made it very clear, but I believe with what we were experiencing and what they have the capability of doing, they didn't learn from the first lesson, so they were already actively working on creating a nuclear bomb and enhancing and developing ballistic missiles at a rapid pace. And so at some point they're going to figure out how to put a warhead on a ballistic missile that can make it not only into Europe and to the surrounding Middle East, but to America. And so, they tried to negotiate, and it just wasn't successful. They weren't, I don't believe, from what we're hearing, agree to the terms. I haven't had any direct contacts, that's my personal opinion. But, it's not easy. I don't, this is the results of stepping in and doing this. But I think, as I said, when I was over there visiting them, every soldier that I talked to believed in the mission, and they were proud to be a part of it and believed they were doing the right thing, the ones that I talked to. So.
Such an interesting thing. Shout out to the families. Condolences to your loved ones. Like she said, your wife, husband, son, daughter. People, I think people have a lot of misconceptions about what it's like to serve in the military, and she actually said it a little bit after I did, but one of the things that people constantly overlook is that less than 1% of Americans actually serve in the military. So not only is your freedom not free, but hardly anybody steps up to actually do that. Less than 1%. So not even 1% of people. And I've been in countries and served where people don't have that freedom to even to raise their hand and swear an oath to defend against enemies, both domestic and foreign. When I was in Korea, I met a lot of the young men that have to serve roughly 2 years in their military. It's not an option for them. So it's definitely not free. I understand a lot of people are divided by colors or left, right, like all that stuff is petty in comparison to the bigger stuff that's happening. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. I hope everybody's morning is going great. I'm going to schedule something here in about 15-20 minutes. Yeah, one more time. I just want to reiterate one more time. Shout out to the families, and love and prayers go out to the people impacted by the soldiers that were killed from the Iowa National Guard deployed in Iran. Once again, super grateful for everybody for stopping by. Hit that like, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and we'll be back shortly.